Hello all. Today I'm going to be reading to you and commenting on Geochronism. This is from issue 2, 1981 of The Source. Remember, when I first wrote this, the planet was nowhere near the scale of destruction upon it that we have now in 2019. But even so, the tribes of the inner earth were very concerned. So to begin, reading from this issue, in their commitment to the regeneration of the planet Earth, the tribes of the central Earth cavity, known as the Heritage of One, are striving to maintain the energy nodes of the Earth as places of power through which needed recuperative vibrations will stream forth and form an envelope of sustaining light around the world sphere. One of the major efforts of the NOAA projection, and this is something that was previously mentioned in another issue, is the maintenance of the sacred places, those regions of the surface planet that are radiant with telluric and spiritual energies. Through surface humanity's abuse of its terrain and resources, and by the spiritual misconduct of our masses, such areas as these, the life support batteries of the earth, are being diminished in their true purpose and potency. The physical and symbolic purposes of sacred earth regions were discussed in issue 380 with special focus on the Four Corners area. In this issue, I wish to touch upon several other major regions which harbor acu-energy resonations, which we as earth dwellers should be aware of and to which we should become attuned. And at the time I wrote this, I was living in the Four Corners area in Cortez, Colorado. And I was sent there, or it requested that I go there, rather. Just a moment, I'm going to take a sip of water. By the ultra sources I worked with, and also through my commitment to working with my mentor, Thoth Hara, then I just called him Thoth or Thoth Rasmus. And so my mother and I chose to move to this location in Cortez, Colorado, most specifically to be near the Mesa Verde Plateau, which is the central point of what my sources call the sacred knot. We have the descending plateau is Lake Titicaca, well, the Altiplano Plateau of where Lake Titicaca is in Peru, Bolivia, and then the ascending is in Tibet. Basically the Himalayan mountains, I guess you could say, but a certain region of those. And the Mesa Verde Plateau is the sacred knot. It seems to connect or work very specifically with the other two. That's a whole other topic, so I'm not going to get off on it now. Excuse me. Okay, let me try this again. Had a coughing spell. Here we go. So that was why I was in that region at that time, and I was doing a lot of writing on the Four Corners area and its relationship to the whole geoenergetics of the planet. So now, if my voice will allow me, I'm going to continue reading. First, a brief lesson in Geochronism. The entrainment of Earth and its life inhabitants to the universal condition of change, creating new states of reality and result in advanced nodes of energy conductivity, all being is charged by the reaction of its own existence. This cognitive factor impels the being to replicate its space-time existence in a sequential order. Elemental matter is a resultant vehicle for this replication. Within the matter of being, both living and what surface scientists consider non-living matter, is an etheric neuropulse, an electrode of programmed reflex, which is not physically ordained in an elemental shell, but is an intelligent command present in the whole of the matter form. The universe itself is the archetypal neuropulse, acting like a wave continuously rolling beneath its own force in undertow fashion. All being is entrained to this cosmic pulse. Planetary spheres and their habitation abide by a specific condition of this entrainment, geochronism, which is the most controlled, gravitized, I don't believe that's a real word, but that's a Thoth word, gravitized type of uni-trainment. That's definitely not in the dictionary. Because a planet sphere is subject to the multiplicity of the many-bodied state in its orbit, solar orbit, and its axial spin, its unitrainment is complicated by many more variations of the time-gravity system than are other being forms. This greater need for diversity produces the geochromatic phases, that's geochromatic phases of quanta-like clicks, much like a stopwatch, accelerating and deaccelerating in a helix of time, each click initiating a change in the reality spectrum to accommodate the difference between the universal pulsing and the neuropulse of the planet. Since the matter body of a sphere has many variant parts, each individual in type and function, inclusive of all planetary life structure, the neuropulse of the total body is subdivided into the multi-billion pulse neuropulses of the individual prototypes, divisible down to the smallest micro impulse, which registers the harmonic of the entire matter body of the planet like a microvision of the world. While each neuropulsed particle acts independently in the sense of selfness, it is not divided in the incorporate consciousness of the system as a whole, i.e., a phase-locked planetary body. Well, that's perfectly clear, isn't it? How to translate this a little bit better? Actually, I think if you listen to it several times, you'll get it, or read the material, which is only in the portal at this time, the subscription portal. But just to really try to boil it down. A planet and a human body are very different in some ways. I mean, they're very connected, very connected, and very similar in many ways. But the big difference is that a human body is not rotating around the sun and spinning on its axis and going through a spiraling motion as the whole galactic system moves through what we call space-time. And then there are a lot of other things. That's just the beginning. But a planetary body has a lot of more multifaceted sequencing than does a human body, even though a human body is very complex in and of itself. And so that's what it's trying to say here. And also, let me take that last line. I can even find it now. Well, it's such a long sentence. I mean, it's probably the longest sentence that anybody ever wrote, but I'll go back again. Since the matter body of a sphere has many variant parts, each individual in type and function, inclusive of all planetary life structures, the neuropulse of the total body is subdivided into the multi-billion pulse neuropulses of the individual prototypes, divisible down to the smallest micro impulse, which registers the harmonic of the entire matter body of the planet like a microvision of the world. And so the Earth is not only doing all these acrobats in space-time and everything, but it has to account for every living thing on it. Everything on it is part of it. So there are certain prototypes of each species, of each rock, plant, of each human, human beings as a whole. with the Adam Kadmon template. All of these create prototypes. And so all of these prototypes have to be figured into the equation. So every light embodied imprint of a planet has to figure in all of those things. And when it does, where I'm trying to find that last thing that I said here, just a minute, let's see. I can't find my sentences. When it does, here we are. It is not divided in the incorporate consciousness of the system as a whole, i.e. the phase-locked planetary body. So it has to be I think I'm beyond my grade pay here, pay grade. Let me go back to it again. I'm sure I'll get this in a moment. While each neuropulse particle acts independently in the sense of selfness, it is not divided in the incorporate consciousness of the whole system, i.e. the phase-locked planetary body. So, as a whole, it must register each and every component of its being. But each of those components has an individual selfness, even a plant. Insects have less selfness, but they're still operative little forms. So all of this has to be integrated into the whole spectrum. And as this occurs, there are many different time relativities that are interphased with this process. And that is why when we live on a planetary body like Tara, Earth, we are constantly having to readjust our human phase locking with these very complex motions of the Earth. Now, we don't do it the way the Earth does it, but we are part of the Earth. So we have to adjust ourselves constantly to these frequencies. And if we are not in touch with the part of ourselves that is actualizing this in quantum micro adjustments, if we are not in touch with just the feel, the essence of it, then we lose sense of self. Because self comes out of regulating that selfness to the planetary field. Eureka, I think I have it. So, how do we get in touch with that part of ourselves? It's not like we have to keep track of it, list all our little micro fractional sequencings, of course not, but we have to feel it. We have to get in touch with the dance, with the movement of it, not in detail, but in essence. We have to recognize that we are moving in coordination, in not more than coordination, in synchronization with the Earth as it does its dance. And understanding that allows us to open our field to a greater extent and incorporate the potential, the possibility of multidimensional self. Not just as a concept, not just as a rational conclusion, but as an actual living experiential format of life, part of that format, a very strong major part of that format. Now that in itself would be a topic to pursue, and I'm not going to get off on it because I'm trying to read you and discuss this whole work that I wrote here. But, bear that in mind, that is something that would bear thought and process. How can we get in touch with that more easily? How can we live as a multidimensional being, which means we need to be able to synergize with the complex and yet exquisite, multifaceted planetary motions, dance motions in space-time. Okay, so now let us continue. The inspiring document, which reads, "Indivisible with liberty and justice for all," is a testament to the cosmic sovereignty of the planet as it resides among the temples of a universal doctrine. Each particle of being registers a holograph of the universe, yet in its fragile decimal of existence, it commands a perfect presence of selfness, unique in its self-containment of spirit. So we are all truly self-contained testaments of spirit, and at the same time, we are registering the holograph of the entire universe and possibly beyond. How can both exist in one body? But they do. And yet, most of humanity, if not almost all of it, is walking around totally clueless to that, not only on an intellectual basis, but in an ability to even begin to experience it. No wonder people are so unhappy. They are so disillusioned. They go create power structures and things to try to make themselves feel here, to feel self, to feel important. Because important really translates to just being here. Because if you can completely be here, you feel important, not in an egotistical way, but you feel like the universe is inside you. And so these are the components that are missing greatly in humanity. And certainly a lot of them are missing in me, I can tell you that. So we all need to get together on this and just work on how we can truly organize our spirit. And of course, you know, the Dalai Lama and many, you know, the teachers and practices of the Middle East, of the Eastern, you know, cultures and religions help you do this. But even they are limited in their scope. And I'm not professing that I have a program up my sleeve that can go beyond that. I'm just saying that they are all limited in their scope. And that's not putting down the beautiful teachings of the ages. But there's something else. And I believe it's on the horizon somewhere, somehow, not as a structured doctrine or principle, oh, you've got to follow these steps to do it, but is it some kind of a breaking of bread that awakens us to this dimension of ourselves that we have yet to truly discover and explore, and most of us not at all. So to continue reading, while the two major matter-form distinctions on Earth are geologic and biologic, they share a symbiotic condition of change and are thus both unitrained to the whole neuropulse of our ether planet. The true quality of this sphere, which is greater than the sum of its physical parts. Life is not a mere attachment to Earth, but the greatly specialized and vastly replicated amplitude of its geochronism, the advanced nodes of energy conductivity. Life is the vehicle for the infinite progression of realities necessary in order for the planet to keep in unitrainment. The degree of advancement along the time helix determines its phase lock on the geochronic scale. Now remember, the word geochronism, geochronic, it's speaking about time here. The entrainment of a planetary body, and we're speaking of Earth here, with time sequencing, time phasing, timelines. When we view, for instance, the planet Venus via our phase lock, which is not changed by our form of space travel, we take it with us, we see the Venusian sphere out of geochromatic sync with Earth. We perceive it then through an altered state, one which has been determined by our geochronism. Our light, space, gravity, time spectra are not at the proper angle to synchronize perspectual, another word that is not in the dictionary, balance between the two worlds. The zenith of the Venusian reality is removed from us when we approach through our limited programming. In other words, we go to Venus and say, oh, it's all full of clouds and gas and it's uninhabitable. It looks awful. Why would we even want to go there except for some kind of, specialized scientific study? But if we really went to Venus, the zenith, at the apex of Venus, what would we find? We wouldn't find a gaseous body. We would find a thriving, populated world. Okay, so the following listings are several major geocosmic regions, sacred lands which radiate the elixir of Earth. Now, I just chose some of the more popular ones at the time, like Shasta, and ones that I had lived in. Some of them I've lived in, like the Great Salt Lake Wasatch Mountain Range, which I was sent to live there 4 different times. I think it was 3 or 4. And some places I'd been, some places I had not been. But I'm going to go through these just as I wrote them in 1981. Mount Shasta, California. Like a sentinel guarding an ancient dwelling place, the mountain of Shasta lifts its sordid peaks to a confrontation with the sky. A mystical matriarch, this mountain shields her territory and those initiates who seek her flame from the trespassers of fleeting passage. She strikes an eternal gaze beyond the reach of men whose logic is chained to mortal stone. This region, replete with cosmic proportion in space and time, beckons only the most reverent followers of light to the song of her summit. The sacred land of Shasta, part of the wounded scallops of lavic earth which erupted in a molten sea eons ago to form the Cascade Mountain Range, is an interdimensional portal. This term defines the etheric bonding of the region, which is especially elastic in its nonconformity to the more porous earth envelope. This condition creates a special sensitivity to the fluxes of the dimensional transition field. Thus, many different channels of receptivity are attained at Shasta. Various levels of the reality spectrum move in holonomic, named for or in the nature of a hologram, accord. Like ghost ships glimpsed by sea-weary sailors, entities float into Shasta's seascape of holographic light screens, awaiting recognition by the inner eye and ear of the seeker. There are numerous cities beneath the shoulders of Lady Shasta's crown. Space is not a consideration, as each city is held within a frequency of its own holonomic line. That is not to say that these cities are any less real than the ones we construct upon the surface. In fact, their reality is more acute than the din of Los Angeles or the somnambulism of New York. Vibrations, frequencies, atoms, space, and time are all real essays of interdesigned holomony. It is the approach of our senses to different states of frequency that cause these factors to disappear in our understanding. The city which is the closest to the vibration of our surface human oscillation is within the genetic frequency of the Central Earth tribes, making it approachable through our standards of interpolation. A perceptive surface dweller could physically encounter the city. Because of the aforementioned elasticity of Shasta's etheric current, there are certain lower elemented life wave entities which, through the holonomic process active there, touch the mind vapor of the more elemented mind-body complex of those who allow themselves to become receptive to the negative mental impressions. To some degree, this is always a factor of any highly charged land area. All of the most elect places of Earth are attuned to the archangelic tides, which must in turn be sensitive to the entire field of realities which souls carry through the endless journey. I'm going to turn a page here. When a door is opened, the shuffling of 1,000 heedless feet shall follow. There are appointed angelic guardians for the purpose of discernment, of select registration, in order to perpetuate the angelic tone in the specific sacred place. It is a tone for that area alone, yet like a hologram, it mirrors the full spectrum of the planet in each facing. It is left to the ensouled neophyte, the individual seeking the flame, to fasten his or her attention to that beacon of higher illumination when entering the door of a sacred place, and to disassociate their presence with the lesser images that cluster at the threshold. I'm going to pause a moment. Of course, I wrote this in 1981. Think of Mount Shasta area, excuse me, in 2019. I haven't been back in a long time. I was like, well, the only time I was there was in 1977. But I understand that it's become quite cluttered, a lot of touristy stuff, and kind of, people are disillusioned with it at this point in many ways. However, that said, the mountain stands. The energy of the area stands. The portal still is there. The sacred cities are all there. But the clutter on the surface has diminished the initial impact of all of that to many people when they come in, especially if people are empaths and very sensitive, which are the people that are going there. So, it's a kind of a turnaway in the instant, but all of the spiritual dynamics are still there in Shasta, in all of these places that I'm reading about here. Mount Teton, Wyoming. Now I know that this area is the heart chakra of the ascension temple or grid of the planet, of which here, where I live now, in Crestone, in the San Luis Valley, is the crown chakra. And Mount Teton, especially around Jackson Hole, is the heart center of that particular grid, of what those calls the ascension grid. So I didn't know that at the time I wrote this, because I didn't have that particular field of consciousness open to me yet. So I'm reading now. Mount Teton, Wyoming, another interdimensional portal which resides under the hierarchy of the guardians in this region near Jackson Hole. The etheric bonding of the area is not quite as elastic as Shasta's, therefore it does not register as great an amplitude. The etheric shield of the Tetons is especially polarized to a ground magneto, meaning that it is phase-locked into the geologic power of the magnetic earth. Consequently, there is a gravity differential which is unique in its special geoconductive properties. The dimensional laws of Shasta apply in basic modulation to the Tetons as well. There are always variations between elect land areas, but Shasta and Mount Teton do share in the nonconformity of etheric bonding, which allows the holonomic rapture to dominate the engramic phasing of their etheric fields. There are multiple complexes beneath the tawny hide of Mount Teton and the whole range there, reaching outward under the area. One of these, harbored in a frequency range closest to our surface vibration, is a central Earth complex, open to surface dwellers who have strong genetic inner Earth links through descendants who were originally inner dwellers. Even though surface individuals are admitted, they are selected not only for their heritage ties, but for their stability and spirituality as well. This is not the only entrance which will receive surface inhabitants, but it is the only complex in North America containing the genealogic records necessary for admittance. It is a clearinghouse capable of sending trace records to any other inner earth-oriented complex throughout the world. Well, now this is getting into something that I haven't really talked about since I wrote it, I guess. We're looking at it from an inner earth perspective here, because I was very inner earth oriented when I was doing the source issues. Not that I've become disenchanted with that, but I've just moved on to other topics, other things that I'm more focused on at this time. But my whole work really started very prominently with, well, it didn't. It started as a true focus to put out in a publication. It started with the inner earth and how it relates to our earth here and other planets and whatever, and the way the inner earth people look at things, look at science, look at spirituality, how they perceive it, which is very, very keen. I mean, it's not too limited, but it is their perspective and their terminology, things of that nature. So what I'm discussing here in this particular is that within this particular city beneath Mount Teton, they have I don't know what you call it, a zone that allows people to come through from the surface earth that have kindred ties, genetic ties. From their perspective, this is not a bloodline thing like we understand it, like, oh, well, you're related to King Henry or whatever. But it's more of are their genetic holofields an alignment with what is in the inner earth to any extent at all? And if they have a genetic relationship to people in there, they're more than likely going to have that synchronization. But then they're also looked at from, well, did they keep it? Did they keep their awareness level high enough to be able to enter? So these are factors involved. Anyway, to continue, we go to the Great Salt Lake, Wasatch Mountain Range, and as I said, I lived there before I was finished, and I don't even think I was finished by the time I wrote this issue. I'm not sure. Anyway, I lived there, as I said, 3 or 4 times. A lot has happened in my life. I can't exactly remember. And I did so because I was guided to go there, requested to go there by my sources. Some amazing thing happened during those stays in that area. So now to continue with the reading, Great Salt Lake, Wasatch Mountain Range, located in northern Utah. This historic region was the divine destination for persecuted Mormons, led by Brigham Young, into the then barren valley surrounding the Great Salt Lake. Encircled by the mountains, this land gave to a wandering people a place of purpose and continuation of their seed in the earth. The recording crystals reveal, that is, the recording crystals means the Akasha. So at that time was having me call them recording crystals. And that was so, not known language that I changed it just to say the Akasha, because almost everybody knows about the Akasha now, even then. So I was saying the recording crystals reveal this area as a designated central point for the future New Jerusalem. A holy city shall arise from where there is now a city composed of the common peril of our society, crime, pollution, and urban blight. The once undefiled depths of the Salt Lake, where only crane and bowed head and seagull pierced the still waters with hungry forethought, are, in this age, darkened with man's refuse and ill-timed, unsought encroachment on the balance of natural rhythms. A pall of smog often claims the visual beauty of the Wasatch Mountain's majesty. Yet mankind cannot, in all its infant fury, dismantle the inner strength of a sacred land, just as I was saying before. Given decree by a power to which all the trivial poundings of the tiny hammers of humanity's folly must yield, this region of America remains a royal throne for a yet-to-be-fulfilled prophetic reign. Its mark shines on the archetypal blueprint as one of the designs for a future earth temple. Within a canyon of the Wasatch, 10 minutes from the roar of a city devouring itself, is the Tri-Gate, a point of telluric charge which receives the threefold flame of the planet into the central Sunatoma. This sacred flame is received only on the inner planes. In the Golden Age, it will be taken fully into the planetary frequency. Underneath one of the Wasatch Mountains, one of the largest ultra-terrestrial bases in North America is sheltered. It is also one of the newest complexes, having been built in 1973. Well, newest to 1981. Now, I want to really touch on something here. At the time I wrote this, I was not aware of the new Earth star, this ascended Earth condition. Somewhere along the line here, and I think it was not in this issue, but just a little bit further along, Thoth started talking to me about the division of worlds. But you see, I don't really know what that meant. I mean, I sort of did, but I didn't have the picture I have now, or even that I had 10 years after I wrote this. So when I'm talking, it's saying that there's going to be this grand city there, you know, of light, and this flame is received now in the inner planes, but it's going to take fully into the planetary frequency. I think we're talking about in the new Earth state, not in the Earth as it is now. So I just want to qualify my thoughts on this, not more than thoughts, my inner knowing on this. So the next one we're going to talk about, let me take a sip here. Haleakala crater, Maui, Hawaii. Now, I moved to Maui in 2004, and we did a very sacred ceremony at Haleakala on the Venus transit that year, having to do with the Opa seals, the burying of the seals. It's a whole other story. But it was a very powerful experience. When I'd written this, though, I'd never been to Hawaii at all, much less the Haleakala crater. So to continue my reading on it, the recording crystals, Aka the Akasha, reveal this moonscape crater as a former major vibratory disk plateau upon which the Earth resonances were received, attuned, and recorded. Because of changing pressures in the etheric bonding field eons ago, the plateau collapsed, inverting its auric charge into the center of the planet. The nature guardians of this region speak of its designation as a future garden preserve, which will be established in the 21st century under the Noah projection of the inner terrestrials. Okay, so what does that really mean now, looking at it from 2019? Does it mean that, you know, in the next few years, because we are in the 21st century, it's all going to be reserved as a garden preserve? I kind of don't think so, the way things are going. I think it means that before the 21st century is over, and it's a while yet, we will be in the new Earth star. And that's where the garden preserve will be established at that point, because those who follow my work understand that these major points will still be with us in the new Earth star, slightly rearranged, but they will be with us. Now, I don't know for sure on that point. Maybe we will be surprised, and all of a sudden it will be declared that Maui, Hawaii is going to be nothing but a garden preserve, and everybody living there will be dedicated to that purpose. It could happen, but I kind of think not. I think this is speaking about the new Earth star. And if so, and if it's saying the 21st century, well, that means it's sooner rather than the 22nd century, or the 23rd, or the 24th. I still won't be around then, but, you know, it's still good news for the planet as a whole. Sooner is better. Okay, to continue. Well, where am I? Oh dear, let's see. By that time, the Noah projection, that's just a name that Thoth gave me to, you know, cover this topic, will have met its major goal of working with the surface dwellers to reseed and regenerate the surface of the world. So does the world need reseeding and regenerating in the new Earth star? That's an interesting question. I'm pausing to see if I get an answer to that. I don't always get immediate answers. Of course, it does need reseeding and regenerating, but if we're moving on to the nearest star, why bother? I mean, in a huge way, you know. However, I'm receiving that some of that will take place in this realm, some of it, before we move on, because we need a certain spark to move into that field. Oh, so they're saying I'm leaving out something here, and that is the pyramidus radius matrix. Yes. Okay, now it all makes sense to me. In the pyramidus radius matrix, which is the bridging platform between what we have now and where we're going into the nearest star, still with the planet, but it's in a slightly removed field of consciousness, whatever. The whole Earth is still there with us, but we can work with it without interference with other people who don't want it to be that way, because they're in their own little world. So in that realm, in the pyramidus radius, in the radius of that energy field, we will have the garden on Maui. We will have these things taking place. Now, back to the article. It says research is already underway on the island of Maui, conducted by David Boylan and his associates, involving communication with plants and the seeding, growing, and harvesting of vegetable crops through the guidance supplied by the residing nature hosts. Mr. Boylan has this to say about Haleakala. And I'm quoting David Boylan, who I knew, I never met in person, but we communicated, and he was also a colleague and friend of my dear colleague and friend, now passed on, William Bueller. So this is what David had to say then. Haleakala is one of the Earth's special places. It contains within it the seeds of every civilization that has ever been on Earth. It is a major energy point in both the old energy web of the planet and the new energy web that is beginning to form. It is a translation point which takes people from old to new. It is a place where inner teaching is the curriculum and the professors are the universal intelligence. It is a place where one goes to meet themselves and to look past the point of cause, unquote. And I was given a lot more about the Haleakala crater, you know, more recently in 2004, 5, 6, in that period of time. I don't have it in my hand at the moment to read it, and that takes us even further off the Geochronism, so I'm just going to conclude here on that point and go to Amistad, near Del Rio, Texas, Lake Amistad. Now, the reason I included this one is because rather recently, from when I wrote this article, I had been there to a site, an area where a starship had landed, and we walked in the field. It was burnt, you know, grass ground. You could see it. We just walked right in it, and this was a major sighting and landing. And by the time people got up there, the ship was gone. But this burnt, you know, circular, very interesting. It wasn't just just big old circular, like somebody put a pot down there. It had traces in it. It had like different things that were on the bottom of the ship as it pressed into the ground. And we had a whole experience I had a whole experience with that through the Thothic, Akashic, and information, whatever. So that's why I included it here in this treatise. So the Amistad area, a site of ancient, historic, and legend, this semi-desert plateau is one of the frequent mysterious sightings of lights in the sky. The Akasha of Earth all hold that this area to be tellurically active, with strong currents shifting from positive to negative poles. Riddled with caves, the walls bear petroglyphs of a lost people. Amistad contains hidden chambers of the ancients and a tunnel leading to an inner cavern colony, the passage to which has been blocked for over 1,000 years. It is a region of high negative ion charge, housing deep aqua caverns, aqua water, I guess, which serve to create a breathing effect similar to the Four Corners. The chakral activity for Amistad is prominently the base of the skull, with phasial pulses for forehead, third eye registers. And then I go to Four Corners Mesa Verde Plateau. And I already told you why I was living there. And I'm living there when I'm writing this material. This region has been covered in previous issues of the source most thoroughly in issue 380. Therefore, renewal members will find some of the following material repetitive. However, I feel this brief summary is an important inclusion for the benefit of new subscribers. So I'm turning a page. Four Corners is the region where the four states of Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado meet. You know, I'm just now realizing that my microphone is really far away, so I'm going to put it closer. I'm hoping you all were able to hear everything else. So I'm just going to make my microphone a little closer. The energy web of the Four Corners reaches approximately 200 miles in each direction. Although this matrix is connected to other nearby force fields, the combined energy often forming special fields during certain geochronic phases. In the Colorado portion arises the Emerald Table, the Mesa Verde Plateau, atop the Colorado Plateau. From the recording crystals, the geologic history of this region tells us that the Colorado Plateau was once a part of a giant plateau or golden table, collapsed. The Emerald Table, Mesa Verde, stood as the strongest resonance point of this once towering plateau. There are several interchanging elements. Sorry, I was tapped on the shoulder by my little kitty who wants to know what I'm doing. I wondered what that was. So I was a little freaked out for a moment. Okay, let me try this again. There are several interchanging elements of telluric force in this land area, combining to form the sacred knot through which the electronic and protonic currents of the ascending and descending earth planes emanating from Tibet and Titicaca plateaus respectively. Ascending, I want to make sure I got that right. I did. It is a place of emergence from the hollow of the central earth and contains the interterrestrial complex, Solarteria, beneath the Mesa Verde Plateau, with offshoots of the main complex extending throughout the immediate region. Ancient vaults lie sequestered beneath within the primal cliffs of the desert and beneath the verdant mountains of Four Corners, a land of extreme contrast in nature. It receives from the nadir to the zenith in earth harmonies. Oh, Nirvana, stop doing that. Now he's trying to take my microphone away from me. When cats want attention, they just don't give up. From the appointed guardians of the Emerald Table is given the following information. The four-square cornerstone, Four Corners, assumes the position and the mark place of the Solomonic foundation stone for the Zionic balance, that Z-IONIC. This is not talking about, conspiracy stuff. This is talking about quantum energy, okay? Z-IONIC. Z being the Coptic letter of the helix flame, which is the dual circulation of positive, negative Serapis fire of the earth, force exerted equal to the force restrained, equal in ionic charge, sustained in both polarities. Now, ionic, I believe, is the same as itonic, and I just wasn't getting it quite right at the time I wrote this. I later received information on itons, but maybe if you are talking about the charge, you can say ionic. I don't know. But in any case, I think it's the same thing. As the sacred knot and activity flex of Four Corners, it is also the door in a four-manifold plane. 1, register of Aries. 2, let me do that again. 1, physical under the astrological register of Leo. 2, astral conic mind under the register of Aries. 3, etheric higher mind or pyramid mind registered under the regenerative power of Scorpio. 4, theta or fulcrum of the illumined mind assumed through the sign of Capricorn, the Grail cup. There's probably more than you wanted to know, but that was what was given to me. The Mesa Plateau serves Earth as an involuted heart chakra, in that the heart ray is received into the central atoma from the solar ray, and also as the spinal base chakra for the lifting of the serpent fire to the crown chakra, also within the it seems like something is missed here. Just a minute. The wheel of the four corners. Now, this is speaking specifically to a chakric reference within the four corners. See, when it's talking about crown chakra, it's not talking about the crown chakra of the ascension temple or grid. It's talking about the crown chakra in this dynamic. This sacred land is high in negative ionic. Well, maybe I'm going to have to look that up and see if ionic is an actual word or if I'm mispronouncing itonic. Charge, which exchange affects the air ions. No, it's talking about ions. Okay, sorry, me bad. It's the ions in the air. Okay, so that's what it's talking about. Constantly purifying the region. Altitude range 6,000 to 11,000 feet. The solar emanations strike the cornerstone, creating a special tone of angelic concordance in the planetary harmonies, the octave as a B minor. Now let me see if that's the conclusion of that part, or I want to keep reading. No, I think I want to keep reading here. This is very difficult to read, and I have not read it since I wrote it, so apologies, as usual. But also, if you might have noticed, if you follow my work, that my older material is very strangely worded. I remember Edgar Mitchell trying to study my sciences with me going, your words. He just couldn't get a handle on them. And I don't know where these words came from. I didn't sit around thinking them up, believe me. They just came flying through, and I wrote them down. Not automatic writing, but I mean, they were just part of what I was thinking at the time. And there they came, there they are. I do write a little more simply now, and still has complex things about it, but it's, more understandable. But I'm reading you what I wrote then, so here it is. To continue. The subterranean cultures of the heritage of one are the guardians of cosmogeologic blueprints, mapping the planet's energy structure on all levels of its existence. The Earth performs the functions of a many-faceted crystal, creating dimensions of reality through an intricate network of telluric force lines, a crystal grid encompassing the planetary sphere. The following information is printed in Earthfire 1, a publication by Geochronism. And this is quoting, from Geochronism publication. Geochronism was the name of the person, or his writing name. In 1973, 3 Russians, historian Nikolai somebody, construction engineer somebody else, and an electronic specialist, Valery Makarov, that's the only one that I can kind of pronounce, announced in the Science Journal of the Soviet Academy of Sciences, and then I'm not going to name that either, Chemistry and Life, that's the translation, their discovery on a geometric grid pattern which spans the globe. The lines of this grid pattern, they revealed further, are the latticed edges of a great crystal, a crystal that is nothing less than the Earth itself. The structure of the planetary crystal form an icosahedron made up of 20 equilateral triangles, interconnected with a dodecahedron composed of 20 pentagons, or an icosadodeca for short. Now, nowadays, this is not new news. I mean, you can Google Earth grid and you'll come up with images of the Earth with this pattern overlaid. It's a very popular thing now. But at the time, it was new news. In the esoteric wisdom of the Pythagoreans, the Icosa and Dodeca are the fourth and fifth of the five sacred solids known to geometry, each having special characteristics associated with it, which reflect a hidden understanding of energies resounding throughout. Remember, I'm still quoting Geochronism here. The Icosa symbolizes water, perpetual regeneration, and the color blue. The Dodeca, on the other hand, vibrates to the element aether, an all-pervading substance known to the ancients but neglected by modern science, which unites and shapes all material elements and is the color white-yellow. We are reminded of the blue dragon and the white tiger of the Chinese Lung Mei, earth energies, with their New World counterparts, the blue-green feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, and the yellow jaguar, Tesau, I can't say his name, of the Aztecs. As these two polarities were remembered as continually seeking balance together in the world's subterranean currents, so the two crystal forms are also harmonized within the structure of planet Earth. Now that's the end of the quote. Pardon me. The subterranean cultures perpetuate the belief of their and our ancient ancestors that all physical being is the geometry of spirit, actualized through the impaction, another word that isn't a word, and compression of thought. Without sentience, there would be no physical dimension. The energy of mind is also the seed current for the life waves of on this planet. The viable planetary energies or life waves are generated in the aether and therefore are in associate relationship to the dodecahedron geometric form. Yet without the regenerating, sustaining fluid of water, the continuity of the life waves in the matter realms would not be possible. It takes fluidic conductivity to bring together the very opposite conditions of dynamics and inertness into a symbiotic harmony. The icosahedron geometric water form, then, provides the line of action for this emulsification. On the crystallix planetary grid, the Icosa dodeca charges the Earth with two creative genders, Icosa water female and Dodeca aether male. As discussed in previous issues of The Source, the central sonatoma of the Earth contains a variant energy field, expanding and contracting as it responds to the outer solar orb and to its own magnetic atmosphere, as well as the many other universal influences. As the atoma conducts its energy dance, the atmosphere of the hollow cavity in which it is suspended becomes rich in conductive ethers. I've used the term conductive ethers to encompass the etheric conductor or charge, which is the adhesive quality pervading all substance, the aether. There are various degrees of charge within the aether depending upon the presence of sentient awareness or spirit factor. Within the central hollow, all the spiritual powers of the planet core of the planet come together in the atoma, where much of it is transformed into a physical charge. The central hollow of the planet acts as a resonant cavity, a space enclosed by electrically conducting surfaces in which electromagnetic energy may be stored or excited. The frequency of the oscillations within a resonant cavity will depend upon its physical dimensions. Definition, wait, hold it. Have to go back. The central hollow of the planet acts as a resonant cavity. Now the next sentence I am quoting from the Penguin Dictionary, and that is, it says, the Penguin Dictionary says, a space enclosed by electrically conducting surfaces in which electromagnetic energy may be stored or excited. And it continues, the frequency of the oscillations within a resonant cavity will depend upon its physical dimensions, unquote. And I continue saying, definition from the Penguin Dictionary of Science, as the conductive ethers in the hollow build in pressure about the atoma, they are channeled through the nervous system of the planet, the many fractures and veins of ore, to the Earth's surface membrane, the crystal grid. Viewing the Earth from a crystalline perspective rather than a biological one, the Icosa dodeca facings of the crystallix grid pattern act as the opposing facings for the resonant cavity of the central earth hollow, a piezoelectric effect. As the energy migrates from the center of each frame to the lattice edges, the pressure is relieved and replaced by tension along these lattice edges. The positive negative charge are then reversed. The ether body or auric body, two perspectives of the same condition, of the planet acts as a soul shell surrounding and involving the earth. As the pressure of the resonant cavity effect builds upon the icosododeca facings of the crystalline grid, the planetary soul shell expands through a process the central earth scientists call, turning page, second form manifestation. For the sake of condensation, I will not attempt to explain this principle here, but suffice to say it does occur, and in doing so allows the transformation of the pressure buildup on the crystallix facings into tension along the lattice edges. As the tension is equalized on the lattice edges, the size of the crystal function body of the planet, not the physical size of the sphere, but the modal performance of its dynamics as a crystal increases. So it says, let me go back again. As the tension is equalized on the lattice edges, the size of the crystal function body of the planet increases, which is not the actual physical planet. The results are manifest in an inverse piezoelectric effect. This completes the crystallic cycle begun with the central sunatoma. The Penguin Dictionary, there was no Google in those days, of science defines piezoelectric and inverse piezoelectric effects as follows, beginning with the former. A property of certain asymmetric crystals when such crystals are subjected to a pressure, positive and negative electric charges are produced on opposite faces. The signs of these charges are reversed if the pressure is replaced by tension. The inverse piezoelectric effect occurs if such crystals are subjected to an electrical potential and alternation in size of the crystal taking place, unquote. And so I continue. The crystallix grid is one of the universal dimensions extending far beyond the idosodeca facings of the Earth's surface and reaching far into the smaller and smaller earth chambers of the geometric pattern, down into the quartz of rock, to the minute lattices of interdimension. Without this entire energy process, our planet as a physical body could not exist. Dynamics is the condition of the universe and all of its components. Through geometrics, the holonomic mirror is conceived within each facing, each microparticle, reflecting the entire moving picture, complete to the nth degree. I'm going to pause just a moment to see how much further I want to go here. Just a few little tidbits at the end here. Geochronism is actually the name, the publishing name for Dr. Joe Jockmans, who's been doing private research into a wide spectrum of geocosmic topics for the past 2 decades. I wonder if he's still living. If he's older than I am, probably not. But it would be interesting to find out, because I did talk to Joe a lot. I mean, we went back and forth quite a bit. But there's this other little piece here that doesn't have anything to do with Geochronism, I guess, but it is interesting, and I'm just now reading it here. I was informed by my sources that the pupils of the eyes of the ultra and interterrestrials dilate when exposed to light. This is due to the fact that their body sensors are in harmony with light, whereas ours are not. Since we receive only the physical frictional degree of light, it is an irritant to us, even though we cannot live without its radiant bath. Thus, only small amounts may enter our biosystems at a time. The pupils must contract to keep these frequencies to a minimum. The more illuminated body-soul complex is in parity with the entire spectrum of light, and upon encountering it, the body embraces it fully. Well, I don't know about you, but that just gives me little tingles all over my body. Again, I don't remember this. I wrote it in 1981 and haven't read it since, but that really does it for me. I love that. So I think I've concluded reading what I was going to read to you. And what I feel very guided to do is to take this article and take a few pieces of it out and put it together in a format very short. Not this whole article, and certainly not all that I've discussed with you here, but just little pieces into something that's can be released to the public for compatibility with my involvement as spiritual director of the Sacred Academy of Geoenergetics, because it is so in alignment with that. And more to come on that particular. So thank you all for listening.